This Warmaster battle report features 1,000 points of Undead against 1,000 points of Bretonnians. We are using the Warmaster Revolution rule set, and this battle showcases the take and hold scenario. Our battlefield represents the borders of the lands of the dead, which is a desert country. And in this game, our narrative is that the Bretonnian army represents a crusade attempting to recover valuable sacred artifacts buried beneath the sands. They will be contested by the Tomb King's army, with the Tomb King perceiving the Bretonnian transgression upon his domain as an act of war. For the take and hold scenario, 4 objective markers are placed on the board. Scenario points are awarded for capturing objectives and for breaking your opponent's army. We lay out terrain according to the scenario map, starting with 2 hills. Infantry on hills count as defended. There are 3 woods. You can only see 2 centimeters through a wood. Only infantry can enter woods and count as defended. The village is the same as the woods, except any unit can enter it and any unit can be pursued through it. We add some walls. Walls cannot be crossed by chariots and give infantry defended status when up against them. And we also add 2 water features. They cannot be crossed by chariots either. Once the battlefield terrain is set up, both generals take it in turns to place the 4 objective markers. 2 objectives have to be within 15 centimeters of the centre line. The remaining 2 have to be on opposite table halves but outside of each player's deployment zone. So let us inspect the Bretonnian troops. This army has a Crusader theme, with the 4 units of knights providing heavy cavalry and a horde of peasants for infantry. The Bretonnian army's special rule means only the knights count towards the breakpoint. The only character is the Bretonnian general, so he will have to issue all the orders. There are 3 units of knights, and Bretonnian knights must charge any enemy within initiative range. There is 1 unit of Grail knights who are even more elite than their counterparts. There are 2 units of men-at-arms who are basic combat infantry. There is 1 unit of bowmen to provide missile support. 4 units of peasants who have been upgraded with a Grail relic, turning them into battle pilgrims. Finally, there's 1 unit of mounted yeomen who are archer cavalry and good scouts. So now let's see what legions the Tomb King has raised from beneath the sand. This army is mainly a horde of infantry units supported with minimal cavalry. The Undead special rule means no units can act upon initiative, but they're unaffected by terror, confusion or enemy proximity. The 1st Brigade contains 3 units of skeleton warriors who are basic infantry. There's 1 unit of skeleton archers who provide missile support, and we have a Lich Priest who can issue orders and also provide spell support. The next brigade also has 3 units of skeletons and 1 unit of archers. Our general is the Tomb King. We have 2 units of skeleton chariots who are the best unit in the army, providing missile support and combat punch. There is 1 unit of skeleton cavalry to act as bait for Bretonnian knights, and a 3rd infantry brigade composed of 3 skeleton warriors and 1 skeleton archer unit. And there is a 2nd Lich Priest for ordering troops and casting spells. The Bretonnians win the scouting role, so place their scouts first, while the Undead have to deploy their entire army. 2 infantry brigades are tasked with claiming the 2 central objectives, with the Chariot Brigade covering their advance. On the right wing, the final infantry brigade is tasked with claiming the hill objective on our side of the table. If the Undead can hold all 3 objectives, they will score 5 points and win the game. The Undead troops are much weaker than the Bretonnians, but they do outnumber them severely. Breakpoint is 8. The Bretonnian general then deploys his army centrally. This allows him to react in force wherever the threat of the Undead is strongest. The Bretonnians win the 1st turn, and the general's first order of the game only barely manages to scrape through with the +1 to his command value due to Revolution rules. The army advances cautiously, trying to get within 5 centimeters of 2 objectives. The battle pilgrims are ordered forward twice to take the village, while the Knight Brigade take up position on the hill. The remaining infantry and the scouts are not ordered this turn. The Undead army then begins to advance. All 3 infantry brigades are ordered twice, capturing 2 objectives and threatening the 3rd. The Chariot Brigade moves forward to just outside charge range of the Bretonnian Knights. The 2 Lich Priests then successfully cast Doom and Despair upon 2 units of Knights. The spell prevents units from charging enemies or pursuing them in combat. Undead Archery then inflicts 7 hits on the nearest unit of peasants, reducing them to a single stand. After 1 turn each, the Undead seem to be in a strong position. The Bretonnians respond by launching an all-out attack on the village held by the Undead. The battle pilgrims have to charge the nearest enemy, in this case the Undead Archers. The single stand unit goes in first, suffering 1 hit from stand and shoot. The remaining units also charge to form a battle line, with the unit bearing the Grail Relic doing a supporting charge. The Undead will count as defended due to the terrain, while the battle pilgrims have a massive +5 support bonus in this combat. Meanwhile, the Bretonnian cavalry rearrange their rank, with the hexed units going to the rear. Back in the village, the frenzied peasants easily push back the Undead Archers. They pursue the retreating infantry, dragging more into the fray, and as the Undead lose their defended position, 2 whole units of skeletons are destroyed, while the peasants only lose a single stand. The Undead must now try and reclaim the village from the Bretonnians. 2 units from the right flank brigade are ordered twice to charge the Bretonnians in the flank. On the left flank, the Skeleton Brigade takes up a defensive position near to the Ruins objective. In the centre, the Chariot Brigade is ordered to charge the waiting Bretonnian Knights on the hill. The Tomb King decides to grant his bonus to 1 unit of chariots, granting them a bonus attack each, and the Sword of Fate is used to give 1 more attack. In the fight for the village, the Lich Priest uses dark magic to raise the dead, and a unit of 3 skeletons returns to the fight to attack the Bretonnians in the rear, and this allows the Undead to contest the objective once again. In the fight for the hill, sensing victory, the 2nd Lich Priest also casts Raise the Dead, and a new unit of skeletons appears in the Knight's flank to attack them. At this point of the battle, things are looking very bad for the Bretonnians. However, in the combat for the village, the valiant peasants manage to defeat the Undead on all sides, pushing them back. The Grail Relic then falls back into the village, whilst the remaining peasants pursue the Undead away from the objective. In the battle for the hill, despite overwhelming odds, the Knight's armour holds against the Undead attack, and the Bretonnians succeed in driving off the Undead and pursuing them. With the Undead losing ground, the Bretonnians now have to drive them off their objectives. The Knights use their initiative to countercharge the Undead chariots, and the remaining battle pilgrims charge the raised dead in the flank. The peasants destroy the remnants of the Undead infantry brigade and fall back into the village. The battle pilgrims smash into the flank of the raised dead but can't quite destroy them. However, the Knights have no trouble in destroying all the Undead chariots and cavalry. The Knights then fall back onto the hill, and we can see that the mounted yeomen have finally taken their objective. In their turn 3, the Undead desperately try to claw back some lost ground. Skeleton archers and warriors charge into the village to try and dislodge the Grail pilgrims. The left flank brigade secure the objective in the ruins from underneath the noses of the Bretonnian cavalry, and to try and prevent the Bretonnians from charging them in their turn, The Lich Priests cast Doom and Despair on the Grail Knights. By this point, the Undead are only 1 unit away from being broken. Therefore, the Tomb King throws caution to the wind and joins the combat in the village to dislodge the Grail Pilgrims. He succeeds in doing this with no Undead losses. Bretonnian turn 4 sees the Knights charge down from the hill to engage the Undead in the ruins, and the Bretonnian bowmen and men-at-arms are ordered 3 times to come and engage the Undead flank in the village. By contesting the 2 key objectives in the centre, the Bretonnians can now win if they break the Undead this turn. And sure enough, the Bretonnian infantry kill off the skeleton archers and remove the Tomb King.
You dare to taunt Mumra?
Right, so 4 turns. The scenario's over. Unfortunately, the Tomb Kings have had to retreat as their army broke and their general died all in the same turn, which means the Tomb Kings score 1 scenario point for capturing this hill objective. We contested the village objective. We contested the ruins objective just before we got overrun by the ride of the Rohir in there. And we haven't got the Bretonnian hill objective, so we score 1 scenario point. The Bretonnians, however, score 1 for their hill, nothing for the contested ones, but they score 2 for breaking me, so they win 3-1 at the end of the game. It was a very enjoyable scenario, it worked really well at 1,000 points, and the whole purpose of this game was to showcase how a horde infantry army, in this case Tomb Kings, plays against a small elite cavalry army, in this case Bretonnians. Now, although the result is very one-sided at the end of the game, I wouldn't have changed anything about my battle plan. It went exactly to plan. My first 2 turns were basically faultless in terms of luck. I got off all the orders I needed to get off, and then when we went into that combat on turn 2, I was pretty confident I had the game in the bag. I'd got my charge off, I'd secured 2 out of possible 3 objectives at that point with my infantry, and my chariots were buffed, and I got off 2 raised deads as well in the same turn, so all the luck was going my way at that point. Unfortunately, when it came to the combat on what we're going to call Hamburger Hill, because it's impossible to take, my chariots just bounced off the Bretonnian armour. I think it was out of 25 attacks against 1 unit of knights, we managed to score 12, 13, 14 hits, something like that, and you saved all but 3. So the writing was on the wall from that point. We bounced off the knights' heavy armour, they then pursued us and rolled us up. So at the end of turn 2, my army was looking pretty ragged. We managed to eke it out for another 2 turns through clever contesting of the village objective, and that was mainly where the fight took place. A horde of frenzied Grey Reliquary peasants against a horde of skeletons. I kept raising dead, kept doing sneaky things by drawing more troops in, trying to flank, trying to add support, and at the end of the game I figured, well, I've got nothing to lose, I'm going to go out on this scenario, let's throw the Tomb King in there so we can go out fighting, and he did that in style. Unfortunately, it wasn't against the peasants who were still stuck in the middle of the village with no line of sight to anyone and no ability to charge. It was from this brigade of infantry, which came out of nowhere, 3 moves. After spending the whole battle just observing, they decided to finally act, and boy was that decisive, it finally won the battle for them. So yeah, it was a great battle. A lot of infantry fighting in terrain, which is always good, and a good cavalry skirmish as well, which unfortunately went against me. Hopefully it was fun to watch. Thanks for watching.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Ian said there. This is a take and hold scenario. It's a cracking scenario. It's in the Revolution rules. I'm not sure whether it was in the original Games Workshop ones. But even at 1,000 points, and it's still played. It was a very enjoyable game. Really hotly contested. There was sort of two big fights. The fight between the cavalry on the Bretonnian hill, which I have to say I got very lucky. The turn Ian charged, both with the number of hits that Ian scored and then my saves. I think 9 out of 10 times that fight would have gone very differently, and Ian was a bit unfortunate there. The fight over the village swung back and forth, with Ian holding it, my peasants taking it, Ian countering with troops off the hill and raising the dead, and forcing my peasants back, and then right at the end, all my other second infantry brigade, the archers and the men-at-arms coming in to win the day. It shows how enjoyable a fight you can have with just infantry. Yeah, really for 1,000 points game, really well contested, very enjoyable game, and looking forward to playing this scenario again.
Ancient spirits of evil, transform this decayed form to